The smell of cornbread still lingered in the air when he started shouting. It was supposed to be a quiet evening, one of those warm family dinners that left the heart full and the house glowing. Gumbo simmered on the stove. Candles flickered gently along the oak table I had sanded down myself when my joints still worked right. My adopted son had brought some friends from town. His wife had set the table with discount plates and flimsy napkins, and the baby had been giggling all afternoon. For a moment, it felt like the kind of night worth remembering. Then I forgot to boil the water for the sweet tea. Small thing. A forgotten pot on the back burner while I rocked the baby who had fallen asleep on my shoulder. I meant to return to it, I truly did, but I lost track of time. When I finally stood to fix it, he snapped. Tossed his napkin down like I'd committed a crime. We're all just supposed to wait again because you can't keep up with one damn thing? The table fell silent. His wife looked away. Their guests stared at their food like it had answers. I'm sorry, I whispered, already moving toward the stove. But he stood up, chair scraping violently across the floor. No, don't bother. You'll just forget again. Like everything else. I didn't say a word. My hands shook. Not from fear, but from age, from arthritis, from years of wear that never came with warning. He shouted louder, his voice slicing through the room. You eat and sleep, that's all you do. You sit in that chair like you're queen of the place while I work, I pay, I fix everything. That's not true, I said, barely audible. He laughed cruelly. Oh really? You think scrubbing a few dishes and telling stories from 50 years ago is contributing? You think being a piece of furniture while the rest of us hustle is help? His wife didn't stop him. No one did. I murmured, I cook, and hated myself for saying it. His laugh turned colder. You call that cooking? We redo everything after you. My wife keeps this house running. She gave him a glance, maybe embarrassed, but she didn't speak either. You're a leech, he spat. A parasite. You're lucky we even let you stay. His words dropped like stones into water, cold and heavy, silencing everything. I looked at my hands. Hands that had once carried him, cleaned wounds, planted gardens, lifted groceries, and rocked fevers away. Hands that had held his when he was a lost boy in a shelter after the storm, clinging to me like I was the only person left in the world. Felt nothing now. Not sorrow. Not anger. Just emptiness. Mother, he said, mocking the word, do you even realize how pathetic you are? You sit here like some relic while the rest of us live. I opened my mouth to speak, but there was nothing worth saying. He believed every word he said. And maybe, just maybe, he always had. I looked at the food I had prepared. Gumbo stirred with the same wooden spoon I'd used for years, cornbread baked in my grandmother's skillet, the napkins folded the way I used to teach the neighbors' children on Sundays when no one else taught them manners. I had thought I was building something real, something solid. Thought I was loved. But standing there in the kitchen, my body aching and my heart too tired to break again, I realized what I had really been building all along was a story I was never meant to finish. So I looked him in the eye and asked calmly, Are you done? He blinked, caught off guard. I just want to know, I continued softly, if you're done shouting in front of your friends, because the cornbread's going to get cold. Something in the way I said it made him pause. Maybe it was the fact that I had stopped shaking. I stood, back straight despite the pain, and looked around at the faces that wouldn't meet my eyes. Then I turned to him and said, Thank you for your honesty. He rolled his eyes, but I meant it. 'Cause now I knew. I knew how he saw me. I knew what I had become in his eyes. And once you know that, you can stop pretending. I picked up my plate, rinsed it at the sink, dried it, put it away, and walked past them all, quietly with dignity. I didn't go to my room because I was tired. I went because I had work to do in the morning. Real work. The kind that would change everything. Long before that dinner, before the shouting and the trembling hands, before the son I had raised turned into a man who looked at me like I was something in his way, I was just a woman with a broken heart and a dream no one believed I could afford. My husband died young, too young. One moment he was fixing the porch steps, muttering about warped wood. The next he was on the ground, coffee still warm in his mug, and I was a widow with no children, no savings, and no backup plan. Just the echo of footsteps in an empty house. But grief had no place in the face of bills. So I kept going. I became a third-grade teacher at the local elementary school. My days filled with multiplication tables, scraped knees, and lunch duty. My nights were spent hunched over lesson plans, writing notes home to parents, grading spelling quizzes. But that wasn't the end of my work. When the sun went down, I became a weaver, thread and loom in the back room, hands aching, eyes burning. It was a skill I had learned from my grandmother, a woman who spun thread into magic behind a stove and under a tin roof. I sold my woven table runners and wall hangings at craft fairs and farmers' markets. Every dollar went into a rusted tin box beneath the floorboards. $1 here, $5 there. Quiet hope stacking slowly, silently. Years later, that hope bought me a rocky piece of land just outside Shreveport. No plumbing, no power, just pine needles and potential. I hired 2 boys from church to help me clear the land. I brought lemonade, hammered nails, and laid floors with all the strength arthritis hadn't yet stolen from me. The cabin rose slowly, beam by beam, wall by wall, one small victory at a time. I chose the wood-burning stove myself, stained the porch railings despite the brush slipping in my hands. Even laid the stone path to the garden I planted with rosemary and wild mint that refused to be tamed. It was more than a shelter. It was a statement that a woman left behind could still build something solid, that I was still whole. Then came the storm. Hurricane Katrina screamed through Louisiana and left silence in its wake. I remember watching the news, my chest tight with helplessness. I could have stayed safe, but I didn't. I packed a bag with blankets, food, and coats, and joined the volunteer crew from our church. We ended up in a Baton Rouge shelter, where voices were hushed and children stared with empty eyes. That's where I found him, my boy. He was 7, sitting alone, soaked bare in his arms, too small for his clothes, too quiet for a child. No one knew who he belonged to. Someone said he'd come in on a bus from New Orleans alone. The paperwork was chaos, the volunteers overwhelmed. I sat beside him, gently asked his name. He whispered it. I asked where his parents were. He didn't answer, just clutched the bear tighter. Something cracked open in me then. Maybe it was instinct, maybe memory, maybe that space in the backseat of my car and the emptier space in my heart. I brought him home. Told myself it was temporary, just until things got sorted. But the paperwork never came. And then one morning he called me Mama. That was the only permission I needed. I adopted him a year later. Gave him my name, enrolled him in school, sewed his Halloween costumes, saved for his braces, and clapped the loudest at every school play. I cried behind closed doors when he had nightmares, and I held his hand when he fell off the porch I built. He loved that cabin, called it ours, ran barefoot across the floors I had polished, built forts from couch cushions, and hung lights on the porch every Christmas, even when we could only afford one string. It was never meant to be just mine anymore. I had made it his. Or so I thought. Years have a way of changing people. The boy with the stuffed bear became a man with expectations. The child who once whispered, Mama, turned into someone who looked at me like an obstacle. And I, the woman who built a home from silence and sacrifice, slowly began to feel like a guest in the very place I had bled for. But even then I didn't see it clearly. Not until he came back that Sunday, smiling, wife on his arm, baby in the backseat, saying, Hey Mama, we're home. He said it with such ease. We're home, as if those 2 words would erase all the years between us. As if the quiet distance, the forgotten birthdays, the silences I had pretended not to notice, could be paved over with one warm smile and a suitcase on the porch. Still I welcomed them. I always did. His hug reminded me of storms when he was small and afraid, when I was the only one standing between him and the dark. His wife nodded politely. The baby reached for my necklace with chubby fingers, and just like that, the cabin felt full again. They said they only wanted to stay a while. Help you out around here, he said. Take the pressure off. I agreed before he finished his sentence. I cleaned the spare room, bought a new mattress, rearranged the pantry, and moved the rocking chair so his wife could nurse in comfort. I pulled weeds, trimmed branches, and even set up the old swing for the baby out back. He called me Mama again, thanked me every night for dinner, brought me wildflowers from the market on Sundays, kissed my forehead and told me I was the glue holding everything together. But slowly the sweetness soured. Compliments became corrections. The gumbo was too spicy, the biscuits too dry. The baby's nap schedule became sacred. I was warned not to speak too loud, not to move too much. My soap was too strong. My towels weren't soft enough. One night, as I cleared the dishes, I overheard her on the phone. "She's not like your mom," she said. "She hovers. She doesn't get boundaries. She's old school. She just sits there." I stood in the hallway, still holding a spoon, as she called me a weight they had to tolerate. "She doesn't help with money," she said. "Doesn't drive. I don't want my baby thinking that's normal." I didn't confront her. I smiled the next morning like always. Washed her mug. Folded her clothes. Moved my chair even further from the living room. I told myself it was enough. That love was supposed to come with sacrifice. That family meant enduring what others couldn't see. Until the day the quiet turned. A blanket, soft yellow, crocheted by hand, was left on the porch too long. She picked it up like it was something dead. "It smells," she said, pinching it between her fingers. "It's ruined." I folded it slowly, took it to my room, and held it for a long time before tucking it away in the bottom drawer. The next morning, a new air purifier appeared in the hallway. Sleek, blinking, humming quietly. "It's for the baby," my son muttered. "The cabin holds in smells." His wife added from the kitchen, "It's that old wood and smoke thing. Years of build-up." They didn't say my name, but I heard it in the space between their words. Soon after, I was asked to eat in the kitchen. "More space for the baby," he said. I nodded, sat at the counter alone, my back to the laughter in the next room. When they had guests, I was told gently, then firmly, not to join. "It's a work dinner," they said. "You can relax tonight." I listened from my room, the same room where I had once nursed him through a fever, as they drank wine and played jazz and talked about parenting theories and property values. I pressed my ear to the door and heard her say, "No, it's still in her name." I tried. Believe me. But everything in this place still has her fingerprints. She said she wished the house was already theirs. That way they wouldn't have to play nice. I stood in that moment holding a towel, the weight of those words seeping into my skin. They weren't waiting for me to live. They were waiting for me to leave. To disappear. Die. That night I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and remembered every nail I hammered, every floorboard I laid, every meal I made when I had less food than hope. They thought I was a shadow of their future. But I was the one who built their past. And the next morning, after the shouting, after the humiliation, after sitting alone in my own home, I realized something that changed everything. I didn't belong here anymore. Not because I was old. Not because I was tired. But because I had finally seen them clearly. And once you see the truth, you can't unsee it at midnight. I pulled out an old backpack from the top shelf of my closet. I moved slowly, deliberately, like I had rehearsed this moment in my mind 100 times without knowing it. Inside I placed my medicine, carefully sorted and labeled with the dates in my handwriting. Then the deed to the cabin, still in my name after all these years, folded neatly into a plastic sleeve. A letter from my husband, written before he died, yellowed at the edges, still smelling faintly of the drawer where I had kept it safe. And lastly, my bank book, a private account I had built in secret over the years with money from weaving, birthday checks I never cashed, and stipends I had tucked away during my years of teaching. The world had assumed I had nothing. But quiet women are good at hiding their storms. By 3:30 a.m. I was dressed, hair combed, teeth brushed. I sat one last time in my old armchair, sipping lukewarm coffee, staring at the fireplace I didn't light. I wanted to remember the cabin exactly as it was. At 4 a.m., I opened the door slowly, careful not to let it creak, and stepped out into the cold morning air. The stars blinked overhead. silent witnesses to my final goodbye. I walked the dirt path I had cleared myself, past the swing where my grandson had once laughed, past the garden now overrun with weeds. I didn't cry. Every step was a goodbye I didn't need to say out loud. 2 miles later, I reached the corner of Route 47. I pulled out my old flip phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. "June," I said when the groggy voice answered. "It's me." He paused. "Well, I'll be. I thought you'd dropped off the face of the earth." "I need to sell the cabin," I told her. There was silence. "This week?" she asked. "Are you sure?" I looked up at the sky. I've never been more sure. June was an old colleague from the school district. She was a realtor now, well known and well connected. More importantly, she knew me. "I'll draw up the listing by noon," she said. "Where do I send the papers?" "Bus station," I replied. "I'll be waiting." And I was. Because when a woman builds something with her own hands, she never truly lets it go. She just decides who deserves it next. The listing went live faster than I expected. Before the "for sale" sign had settled into the red clay, he found out. The calls came in waves. Missed calls, voicemails, then text after text. I didn't answer. I had nothing left to explain. 3 days later he found me. I was sitting on a bench outside the Methodist church, sipping sweet tea from a foam cup, when he pulled up in a cloud of dust. He slammed the car door, rushed toward me, and knelt in front of me like a child begging the rain to stop. "Mama," he said, breathless. "Tell me it's a mistake. Tell me the listing's wrong. Tell me you didn't sell the cabin." I looked at him. Really looked at him. "I didn't sell it," I said calmly. "Not yet. I signed the papers. The sale closes Friday." His face collapsed. "You can't," he stammered. "That's our home, my home. The baby's crib is still there. My whole life is in that cabin." I took another sip of tea. He dropped to his knees. "Mama, please. I'll do better. I'll take care of you. Just don't sell it. Don't take the house." I watched him cry. Not for me, but for the roof he thought he had claimed through kindness he never showed. Then he said it. "Make a new will. Please. Just put it in my name. If you love me, just do that." And that's when I finally spoke. "You're not my blood," I said. His face twisted in shock. "You're not my son by birth. I found you in a shelter after Katrina. You were holding a soaked teddy bear. No one came for you. I brought you home because you needed someone, not because I owed you anything." His mouth opened but no words came. "I loved you like a mother," I continued. "And I don't regret a single day. But love is not debt. And it doesn't mean I sit in silence while I'm insulted in my own home." "I didn't mean it," he whispered. "Yes, you did," I replied. "And that's what makes it worse." Then I stood. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I walked past him, slow but steady. I didn't owe him a house. I had already given him a life. And for that, he should have been enough. That I heard from June later that day. She said he tried to stop the sale, tried to contact the buyer, claimed there had been a misunderstanding, that the property was a family estate, that it belonged to him. She showed him the deed. My name, and only my name, written in black ink that had not faded or changed for over 2 decades. No cosigners. No amendments. No transfers. Just the truth, etched plainly, boldly, and finally staring him in the face. He went back to the cabin, which was, for a few more days, technically still his shelter. His wife exploded when he told her. Called him a fool. Screamed about how he should have locked it down years ago. She ranted about sacrifices and promises and moving out here for a future. He couldn't say a word. They had built an illusion on top of land that was never theirs. And illusions, when exposed, don't crumble, they vanish. Meanwhile, I was already in my new apartment. A modest 1-bedroom above a florist's shop. Nothing fancy. But it had everything I needed. A window overlooking a tiny garden where butterflies visited in the mornings. Second-hand furniture, a slightly dented kettle, and most importantly, peace. No one muttered under their breath when I forgot something. No one sighed when I took too long to climb the stairs. No one called me useless. For the first time in years, the silence around me felt like soft fabric, not sharp edges. A week after the sale closed, an envelope arrived at the cabin. Official, notarized, with a clear instruction. Vacate within 30 days. That night my phone lit up 4 times. I didn't answer. The messages came next. Please mama, pick up. Please, we're scared. Where are we supposed to go? Asterisk, I'll do better. Change. I swear I will. Asterisk. I'll take care of you like I should have before. I read them once. Then I turned off the phone. Not because I hated him, but because I had already given him every word I ever owed. Silence, by then, was the only thing that still had weight. They stayed in the cabin until the very last hour. Packed in a panic. Left dents in the walls. Scratches on the floors. When June arrived with the new owners, she told me the place felt hollow. Not because it was empty, but because it had never truly been appreciated. It looked like a ghost, she said. Like a man trying to climb out of a grave he dug himself. I didn't ask for more details. I didn't need revenge. I only needed quiet. And quiet at last I had. A few days later I wrote a letter. Just one. No return address. Folded neatly inside was a note, written on parchment I had saved from a stationery set my husband gave me the year before he died. I mailed it on a Wednesday. It was short, without a signature or emotion. Just the truth. Asterisk, you said I was useless. Now you'll have to find somewhere more valuable to live. Asterisk. I addressed it to the old cabin, knowing they would be long gone by the time it arrived. That was the point. Some truths aren't meant to be read in the moment. They're meant to echo when the room is finally still, when the shouting has stopped and the emptiness speaks louder than the people who filled it. That morning I made myself a cup of tea, black, with a touch of honey. The kettle hissed like it always had. I sat by the window, curtain open, and looked out at the rooftops. In my lap was the letter from my husband, the one I had folded and unfolded so many times it now held the shape of my grief. If you're tired, let go, he had written. You are not meant to carry someone else's life forever. I read it again. This time not with sorrow but with understanding. I had carried a life that was never mine to hold forever. And I had finally put it down.